Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Sports Card Madness. This is LZ. I am here with Nick. Today on the show, we have Alex, who's the founder of Collectors MD. And this is really going to be a cautionary tale of gambling, addiction, really in the sports card world. And Alex has kind of turned his challenges into a positive opportunity that he's going to get into around helping collectors in our space with addiction, whether it be breaking or gambling. And he's here to tell us all about it. We're going to get into his story and how we got here, and then we're going to end with where you can receive help through Alex and others. So, Alex, welcome to the show. Happy to have you on.
Welcome, Alex.
Thanks, LZ. Thanks, Nick. Really appreciate you guys having me.
You got it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this is when we heard about the service that you are offering, it really hit home for us. This is a very important topic. Nick and I do get into a lot around like where the hobby's going, and we focus a lot on maybe like let's call it like the sociology of the hobby and how people think and act. And when we heard that you were kind of offer this, we're like we got to talk to you, Alex. So I think a really good place to start is just to tell your story because your story is interesting, and I think it's going to bring up a lot of follow-up questions from us and
Yes.
even the audience. It's going to get the audience thinking as well.
Not just interesting, but you've already told me the story prior to recording. I think it's actually very relatable
Yes.
Yep.
for many people in the hobby as well.
Mm.
And I think this episode, it's important to understand like it's not just you. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah.
somebody else is going through this, there are other people as well, and this will give it some
Yeah.
visibility.
Yeah. I appreciate that, guys.
Yeah, so why don't you dive right into it and tell us how you got to where you are today? What the story is.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've collected my whole life. I grew up in the 90s. As a kid, I was into Pokemon, the Chicago Bulls era, collecting Upper Deck, Lear tops. So it was a part of my DNA from the very beginning. As I got a bit older, graduated college, started to earn some income, had an opportunity to start spending some of that disposable income. I got super into the sneaker community and I started to collect sneakers. So for the better part of my 20s, I was the sneaker guy. I was the sneakerhead. I got to a point, where it started to get a little bit out of hand, and I realized that quickly when I was running out of space. I was running out of, you know, space to put these drop run containers, which you actually see behind me. It's my what's left of my collection.
Oh,
But at one
yes.
point, I did have 500 plus pairs of sneakers,
Wow.
and my wife, girlfriend at the time, would constantly give me grief that, it was just becoming a problem. So
Mm.
I started to kind of downsize, started selling on platforms like eBay and StockX. And that was really always my passion. I would attend SneakerCon and big releases, line up with friends for, the next Jordan release or collab or whatever the case may be. And so, fast forward to 2020, pandemic hit, and everybody was on lockdown. And a buddy of mine who knew, obviously, I was into collecting, reached out to me about the sports card hobby. And he kind of, gave me some high level, um, you know, uh, ideas around ways that we could potentially monetize through breaking. And I watched a few breaks that he was hosting through an account called BOGO Breaks. And so I was super interested. I thought it was really cool. And basically being reintroduced to the hobby, got me sucked in really, really quickly. And so
Mm.
me and a few of my buddies that I grew up with, again, we started this brand, BOGO Breaks, and we were breaking on Facebook, Instagram. Throughout the majority of the pandemic, I would say 2020 to 2021, we were doing it almost every night, and we were having a lot of fun. We were meeting a lot of new people. It was a really, really great opportunity for us to, earn a little side income, but also, become acclimated with the community that was really thriving at the time. And so, um, we were, I would say, again, doing it through the end of 2021. And then we all kind of collectively decided that, we had to prioritize work as things were starting to return to a state of normalcy.
Mhm.
And so everybody kind of just slowed down. We went from doing it every night to once a week. And eventually we kind of just stopped altogether. But I was the one who continued to join breaks, buy personals, and at first I was like, this is great. I love the hobby. I love collecting. I love sports. This is the perfect sort of combination for me. And I collected and accumulated cards similar to the whole sneaker hobby. And it got to a point where I was like, I have all of these cases of cards. What am I going to do with them all? And eventually, again, I started to realize that I was overspending and I was trying to be involved in every single release and every break. And there was this sense of FOMO that if I didn't, join a break for the newest product or the newest release, I would be missing out. And it's only exponentially gotten worse since then, right?
Mm.
We all tend to spiral when things become more and more hyped. And that is exactly what's happened with the hobby as Fanatics has taken over and Whatnot has entered the environment, and everybody, is learning about the hobby, and it's just becoming more and more mainstream. And so
Mhm.
through this entire process, over the last 5 years, I was also gambling, and it got to a point where, I was spending thousands of dollars in a break and getting skunked and going on my phone, joining a live blackjack table and trying to win the money back that I had just lost on
Oh, wow.
a break
Mm.
on gambling. And it was this vicious cycle, and it was just, only getting more and more serious. And I just wasn't realizing it. I just thought, oh, I'm just like another normal guy, everybody gambles. They have the ads everywhere. They force it down your throat.
Mhm.
And I realized after, you know, a little while, a few really, really bad nights or, tilt sessions, as we call them, that I had a problem. And so I started to go to GA meetings, and I was going for, I would say, about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And I think they were helping a little bit, but the problem was that, folks in those rooms didn't really understand the scope of the sports card hobby and, how there are so many synergies between the hobby and gambling. And while, I think I had a deep-rooted issue with just gambling in general, it really was the sports cards that was fueling that addiction. And so, I stopped going to those meetings because, again, I just felt like I couldn't resonate with those people, or they couldn't understand my story and, what I was going through.
Mm.
And so I started to, collect again. I wasn't gambling because I did self-exclude, but I was joining breaks and I was buying personals at, just a disgusting rate, spending thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars on a weekly, monthly basis. And it just, again, it spiraled out of control.
Can
And
we
so,
um can we break down this path a little bit before we
yeah.
because you mentioned a lot of different things there that were interesting to me. The
Mhm.
first one was you mentioned that you were taking losses or winnings from the sports card breaking world and you were literally going to try to recover that on the blackjack table. Did I hear that correctly?
That is correct.
Mm.
So when you are, I'm not a big gambler, but obviously I've been to casinos. When you're doing like that blackjack, you're at the blackjack table or the craps table or whatever you're playing. Does that feel like when you're in a break to you, or does it feel different?
It's similar. There, a lot of feelings that you get when you are doing either, right? You get that sense of rush You get that excitement that, next big hit is just going to deliver that dopamine hit that your body is craving.
Hmm.
I would say there are some differences where with sports cards, there's the nostalgia factor. There's the fact that you are chasing something that you want to collect or put in your personal collection. Whereas, with blackjack or gambling, you're just trying to double your money,
Right.
right?
Hmm. So the collecting side of it, when you were getting into these breaks, were you actually collecting, or were you getting a big hit and then flipping it on eBay the next day?
It was both. It
It was
was,
both.
it was
Okay.
100% both. Yeah,
Hmm.
I was definitely collecting. I would curate my collection and everything was in order. I would photograph everything and post it on Instagram. So I definitely was trying my best, I think subconsciously at least, to focus on my collection or justify it as like I'm collecting.
Hmm.
But, when push came to shove and I spent $5,000 in one night and realized, I got back 5% of that, I would turn around and sell a portion of my collection to recoup that money. So
Sure.
was I really collecting? I
Hmm.
don't know. And
Interesting.
so
With
yeah.
so you were getting into breaks. Were you also buying wax? Like, were you buying boxes and ripping them yourself and like getting a high off of gambling that way as well?
Yeah, I was buying a lot of personal boxes
Hmm.
through breakers, whether it
Hmm.
be on Instagram or whatnot or Fanatics Live. But I was also, going to my LCS or to Walmart or Target to buy boxes to open myself to kind of scratch that itch for sure.
When
Okay.
you so when you went through this process, one of the big questions I have, I actually it's funny, like I communicate with my wife all the time when I buy like a big card or a set or something like that. Were you open about what you were spending with your girlfriend or wife at the time, or were you hiding it from them?
I was hiding it.
Mm.
My wife, now we've been married now for 2.5 years. She knew that I had, an addiction. It's kind of hard to hide, especially when things start to accumulate. She knew that I was a degenerate gambler, but she didn't know the extent. She didn't know how much money I was spending, how much money I was losing, gambling or winning. There were ups and downs, but I was definitely hiding it from her. And
Mm.
that's something we're still working through today.
Alex, you brought us to the story and you started as a sneakerhead, like you said. So you had
Yeah.
over 500 sneakers. You were chasing the latest drops and going to the shows. You were buying them on, I think you said eBay, and there was another platform as well. What do you think the difference is between the highs of the sneakerhead days of you
Yeah.
versus now card collecting? And it feels like in your story that things went like really hardcore, a totally different direction when you got into to cards. And I'm wondering if you've done any like self-reflection on why that is. Is it
Yeah.
marketing? Is it like what could it be?
Yeah. That's a great question, LG. I think with sneakers, when you would chase a release or you knew something was coming out and you planned to buy it or you had an opportunity to buy it because you won a raffle or you waited in line, you knew what you were spending your money on, right?
Mm.
The newest Jordan 3 black cements that, just came out, you knew you were spending $220 on those. Or if you were paying resale or aftermarket value, you knew you were spending $400 on a pair of sneakers.
Right.
With wax, with breaking, um, with sports cards and the TCG, you don't know what you're getting. You're spending upwards
Mm.
of two, three, $400 a box for a hobby box. And you don't know what the contents of that box is. You don't know if you're going to get back 5% of your value. You don't know if you're going to get back 1,000%. Like it's so volatile, and there are so many nuances that it's a lot more exciting because of that surprise factor. And
Yeah,
so I
so from
think
a
that's one of the
psychological
reasons.
perspective, it's like it's the high of the surprise or the high of not knowing what you're gonna get. And it just that
Exactly.
just brings a whole nother level, a whole nother high to the
Right.
to it. Yeah.
You're not breaking a box of, Topps Chrome Air Jordans. You know what I mean? And then
Right, exactly.
three of you
Yeah.
get Skechers, and then, one
Mhm.
person
And
gets
one
the Air
gets the
Jordans.
Jordan.
So
Right.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
One of the things at the beginning of your story I wanted to, or actually probably the middle of the story, the Gamblers Anonymous thing. I thought
Yeah.
about this and I was like, why? I wish more. I was just thinking like the collectors need something like this, and
Mhm.
you entered that. Did you feel like it was effective for this sports card addiction, or do you feel like it left something to be desired? And also, were there other people dabbling in sports cards in these groups?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nick. I felt like there was definitely something still left to be desired, and that's
Mhm.
one of the reasons why I stopped going to those meetings. At first, it was therapeutic because I had an outlet where I could go and just
Mhm.
speak my mind. I could talk about whatever I wanted, judgment-free zone. People would provide feedback, and I chit chat with people after these meetings. I got to meet other people that have gone through very similar things, but no one could really relate to sports cards. And to the average Joe, sports cards are very juvenile.
Yeah.
It's a children's hobby. It's like
Huh.
you're collecting toys, like it's sneakers are similar, I mean, in that sense, but like
Mhm.
not to the same extent. When you sports cards or Pokemon, you think of your childhood, right? And
Right.
so it was really hard to connect with those people. But there were a handful of other people. I would say two or three other people that I met through
Hmm.
my experience in GA that also dabbled with sports cards.
Interesting.
Was that support? So did that support group? So you said that you weren't necessarily getting what you needed. Were they taking you seriously? Because you mentioned like the fact that sports cards are thought of as being a bit juvenile, right? And it's like I could see in scenarios where you're going and you're talking about your issues, and they're just like, oh, what? I mean, whatever. That's just sports cards. Like
Right.
big deal. I'm dealing with alcoholism. Like that's a real addiction, Alex. Right? Like, did you
Yep.
ever get like static like that from anybody?
A, a little bit,
Yeah.
but for the most part, I was also gambling, and I was gambling a lot of money.
Sure.
So there
Yeah.
was, I
Yeah.
guess, some validity in that. But if I
Mm.
showed up to the room and just, solely talked about how I was, buying sports cards and I consider that gambling or it's having
Mm.
the same impact on me that gambling would, I'm sure people would be open-minded and be willing to take it seriously. And I say that because GA isn't necessarily just for people who are addicted to sports betting or casino. There are people that come in who have addiction to the stock market, have issues with day trading. There are other realms of or forms of gambling or other, hobbies that definitely mimic gambling. So,
All right, that's good. So I do. So me and Nick, you went through this story, and we kind of eventually jumped in with a lot of questions because this is a very interesting story. But we did kind of cut you off, and I think we
that's all
ended
good.
we ended with you, trying to get help, going to Gamblers Anonymous, finding out that it's not really for you, and then we kind of jumped in. Is there anything like more to the story that you want to tell? I want to just make sure that you have the time and space to tell the rest of your story, and then
Yeah.
certainly talk about now
Yeah.
where you are today.
Yeah. So there's definitely another side to it, right? There,
Mm,
I would like to think of this entire project I'm working on as a two-pronged effort, right? There's the support side of it where there needs to be some sort of outlet or safety net for individuals like myself who have gone through what I've experienced with collecting or with the sports card hobby specifically. But on the other hand, the sports card hobby in general, and I think we all have collectively either agreed on this or have talked about it to an extent, has become the Wild West.
mm,
And there is no regulation. There is no gaming commission or SEC looking over,
sure.
the shoulders of Fanatics or whatnot, or any of these, massive conglomerates of companies that hold the keys to everything. And so I think there just needs to be some accountability. And if we can't hold Fanatics and whatnot and eBay and Panini, accountable, then we can at least hold ourselves accountable. And
Hmm.
so, my biggest message, and I'll get into Collectors MD shortly, but my
Mm.
biggest message that I want to preface is that I am by no means anti-hobby. I still love the hobby. I still love sports cards. I still have my, what's left of my personal collection, pieces that, I never want to part ways with for a number of reasons, and it has nothing to do with their value. Um, but it's okay to love the sports cards as long as you hold yourself accountable and are making sure that you're not hurting yourself or those around you.
Hmm.
All right. So
Okay.
let's talk about Collectors MD a little bit. Actually, before that, I did have one very quick question. What is a tilt session?
Oh man. So a session is when you go from this to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Gambling is a very, very slippery slope. And
Mm.
your intention or, what you think you're doing in that moment could be, yeah, I'm just sitting down for, quick few rounds of blackjack. I'm only going to play with a couple $100. I'm only going to bet $50 on this, college basketball game. And then next thing you know, you're
Your
in
wife's.
full
Yeah.
tilt.
Got it.
Yeah,
Sure.
All
you're
right.
spending everything, and
Okay.
it's all done.
I think, yeah, I mean, I've seen the terminology before, but I never knew what it meant. So,
Yeah,
this story has kind of led up to now, basically. I think I talked to you like
yep,
last week, and you
yeah,
formed Collectors MD, as LZ talked about in
yeah,
the beginning. How can this organization help? Can they help right now? What's your vision for helping people like you?
yeah. So first of all, I've never been this excited or passionate about any project that I've worked on, and it's an idea that I've been toying with for let's say a number of years because I've acknowledged and realized that I have a real problem now for quite some time.
Mm.
And so, a huge part of launching something along, the lines of Collectors MD, I think I was scared for a while. I had a sense of, what's called imposter syndrome, where I wasn't sure that I was the right person or qualified to carry such an important message. But finally, I
Hmm.
realized that, if I don't do this now, then when is it going to happen? Who's going to do it? Who's going
Yeah.
to be responsible for something like this? Because as the hobby continues to grow, it's only going to get worse and worse. They're targeting younger people who aren't educated. There's just, no end in sight as to like where this could potentially be headed. And
Mhm.
so last week I bought a premium subscription with WordPress, created a domain, an email address, an Instagram account. It wasn't expensive. It didn't require any sort of like, investment or anything like that. And I created Collectors MD. I actually originally branded it as Collectors Anonymous, but I want something like this to be more approachable
Yeah.
and hopefully more mainstream in the long run. So, what Collectors MD is, it's a support-driven platform for people who collect anything from sports cards to TCG to sneakers to handbags to luxury goods. So I want to emphasize that this is for everybody
It's
in the
broad.
collecting world. It's not
Yes.
necessarily just for sports cards, but that's
Mm.
what we're focused on right now. And it's for those people who have felt overwhelmed, overextended, or even, out of control with their collecting. And it's a space where, we're focused on accountability, reflection, and community, built by someone who's actually lived it. So, like I said before, we're not anti-hobby, we're pro boundaries. We still love the chase. We love the stories and the nostalgia, but we believe you shouldn't have to lose yourself in order to really enjoy it. And so through things like daily reflections, real collector stories, peer support groups, and hopefully eventually future educational resources, Collectors MD is here to help people who collect with intention and not compulsion. So we're
Mm.
creating a space for the conversations this hobby has avoided for too long, and it's not just about judgment, it's about support because you can love collecting and still protect yourself while you're doing it.
Mm. All right, Alex. So next week I decide to sign up. I go on your website and yes, I want to get involved. I want to get some help. What am I going to experience? Because this you admitted, right? This is early stage for this
Right.
venture. What is the next, let's say, 90 days look like for me if I start getting involved in your organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been having a lot of conversations, one-on-ones, just speaking with people on the phone who
Mm.
are in the same shoes as me or have experienced loss or are going through really tough times. And it's been really, again, therapeutic for not just me, but the other person to be able to have these conversations and be open, again, in a judgment-free zone to share what we've gone through. And so in the short term, I am collecting, as no pun intended, as many names and email addresses as I can so that I can start hosting virtual meetings that will mimic the experience of being in a GA room. And even if it's just half a dozen people at first,
Mhm.
that's still enough of a community for people to join and reflect, self-reflect, share feedback, and have, a space and a safety net to fall back on when they're not
Mhm.
feeling, the best about themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know what's crazy about this space? Like, you've got gambling companies like in Vegas or even DraftKings, they fund groups like this. They have call centers that are funded by people
Yep.
that help. They have mental health professionals. They have caps they can set. I bet on the Super Bowl with my son. Like, I see like there's responsible betting caps and things. I'd love to see more of that enter the sports card space. Like
Yep.
watching fanatics take a real serious stance with this and say like, maybe on the back of a box, like here's your odds and it's gambling. Or on
Yeah.
a break, here's some guardrails on this break so you don't just blast the credit card. I don't know.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah, there are no guardrails in place. That's such a great point, Nick. And it's not just gambling. I mean, think about like alcohol brands. They are constantly promoting
Sure.
responsible drinking,
Hmm.
you know, against drinking and driving, underage drinking, things like that. Every single uh, you know, category or company that, has some risk associated with it, those companies have a corporate responsibility to share that message or, at least endorse those types of messages in
Hmm.
order to prevent people from spiraling out of control. And even when those people spiral out of control, they offer some sort of service or resource. Hey, you're gambling too much, or you have a problem. You know somebody who has a problem. Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right.
Something
Yeah.
like that exists. At least, it's not enough in my opinion, but it's at least something. And to your point, Nick,
Yeah.
that does not exist in
Right.
the
It doesn't
hobby
exist. No.
whatsoever.
It doesn't.
All right,
Yeah.
so time is flying. LZ and I usually do like a final question for each other if you've ever listened to the show, but we're going to include you in on this as well. And I think this question will be helpful because we're going to almost crowdsource feedback for this organization for you. So this question really goes out to the audience on audio. It's sportscardmadness@gmail.com. Hit either me or LZ up on Instagram or leave in the comment
Socials.
section.
Yep.
And yeah,
Comments. Hmm.
it's going out to all of you. So
Hmm.
we'll let you go last because you're the guest, but I'll kick the question up. LZ will go first.
Mm.
My question is, if you had a gambling problem, a sports
Hmm.
card gambling problem, or if you can't possibly think that you're ever going to have a problem and you're perfect, your brother-in-law has one.
Well, yeah, my brother-in-law does have a lot of
I'm
problems.
just messing with you, man. Whoever, right? Your
Yeah.
cousin's uncle's,
Yeah.
whatever,
Hmm. Hmm.
has a problem. What is the one thing that you would want to see out of this program that could help them? So LZ will go, I'll go, then you'll go, and then we'll
Ooh.
wrap.
All right. So, well, I want to give you, you know me, man. I don't like to just go with one. I like to give you a couple options.
He cheats all the time.
So, as Alex was talking about this, I was thinking about I do think that you should not reinvent the wheel, and some of these programs do work. Gambling Anonymous,
Yeah.
Alcohol Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous. I think a sponsor would be really helpful. Having
Yeah.
somebody who's lived and breathed this that I could potentially just send a text message to,
Mm.
or or give a call to and like, hey man, I made a mistake last night. I went way too hard on this break. Or I see this card on eBay. I really need it for my collection, but it's 10 grand. I can't afford it. Like, help me out, right? I think that would be helpful. Also, Alex, as you're describing, you built this website last week. I think one of the things that I would recommend you do, and this is going to happen over time, right? Because this is going to cost money, but building infrastructure to actually have some virtual sessions with people as well. Like you see this is becoming a huge, huge thing.
Right.
With all of these online therapy services that are out there, and there's a lot of telehealth technology out there. So I think this is probably more like medium to long term for you. It would be great if you could outsource some of your therapy to maybe some additional professionals, and you're going to have an online therapy session, a telehealth session with somebody.
Absolutely.
So those two ideas that came to my mind, Nick, what were some of the ones that you were thinking about?
Well, you cheated and did two, so I'm going to do two. And then,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Alex, the question for you is almost like, what would you like to accomplish? If you had like, not unlimited money, but you had the means. So
Right.
my two, it's similar. The first one's similar to what you said. This is free. Big Brother, Big Sister programs have done great for 100 years for a reason. It's a perfect mentorship. Those have more of a positive spin, right? But like, I love this idea of, somebody that's struggling, and if they are struggling, they could just call you, Alex, just to start,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
then as
Yeah.
your time gets sucked up, you have another person that they can call, and you have like this two-way relationship, like a big brother, little brother type of thing. I think that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Pretty cheap, and it'd be kind of cool. The other thing that'd be awesome is getting a real mental health professional. Like I myself have a therapist that helps with, not just performance coaching, but also, like mental health stuff. Like she's great. And I think that this space could benefit, like we all have our stuff, and if people are having issues with gambling and things like that, like getting somebody, and yeah, this will cost some money, but they have excess time. And if you could get on a virtual call with somebody for a half hour, maybe or maybe not covered by insurance, whatever, you could talk to them and just say like, hey, here's my problems, and they can at least give you a framework, to start with. I
Yeah.
think that'd be amazing down the road. Those are
Yeah.
my two.
This is what I'm talking about. I mean, what I love about this conversation is that it's allowing for collaboration. It's allowing for all of us to put our heads together and come up with some ideas to create, a sense of positive change for a hobby that we love. And that's so important to me. So, with that said, I want to be able to offer the community educational resources beyond just therapy, right? Like things like budget trackers or, like
Yeah.
I don't
Mm.
checklists for specific products coming out where like you don't have to focus on the entire product. It could just be like a few of your favorite players and like, I don't know, I'm just spitballing. But again, educational resources to help people that are new to the hobby and people who have been in the hobby for a long time understand the nuances and also understand the risks and danger of being involved in such a lucrative hobby.
Great.
Alex, I love that. If I go back to an episode that me and Nick did probably at least a year ago, we talked about how if you're going to get into the hobby, you need to have a real plan. So I think
Right.
to your point, you could give some resources on trying to figure out what you really want to collect. Like
Yeah,
come up with a plan instead of just like
exactly.
buying everything, just chasing anything and everything. Maybe you identify that, oh, this is my favorite athlete or my favorite sport. I'm
Right.
only going to focus here. That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
And
even if
then,
you do want to gamble, then you could say this is how you gamble responsibly.
mhm,
Totally. Almost
yep,
like a life coach of sorts or
Yeah.
an advisor.
sure. Right. And
Yeah.
then another one, I mean, we're doing it right now. I think you should do a podcast. I think that would be a great addition to what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You could have, people come on and tell their stories similar to you. I mean, that's the way you help people out, man. So
Love it.
Yeah. No,
yeah,
I would
definitely
love to
look
do
into
something
that
like
too.
that
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So we're going to finish it up. Why don't you tell the audience how they can get in touch with you, how they can find your services, what your website is, all those great things.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can check out Collectors MD. It's at Collectors MD on Instagram. We've also launched Twitter, TikTok, Discord. We're going to be everywhere so that regardless of where, you are consuming your content, you'll be able to check us out. Right now, we are focused on Instagram as it's only been a week that we launched, but you can also check out our website, collectorsmd.com. You can email us at info@collectorsmd.com, or you could just shoot us a DM. And I am happy to speak with any and everybody. I just want to have a conversation, an honest conversation, and spread the word, spread awareness. So
Well, that's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
great.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Alex.
Absolutely.
And in the audience, don't be shy.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Leave feedback, what you'd want to see out of this service in the comments, or just email us or DM us or whatever. Thanks again.
All right. Great. Thanks,
All right.
Alex.
Thanks so much,
everybody.
guys. Really appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.